Hi, Chris here with a monitor brand that I've not covered before. It's from a company called Innocn, and this is their 27C1U model. It is a 27-inch 4K IPS monitor. They claim that it does have 100% sRGB coverage, and I'll be checking that out with my Spider X Pro. I will measure it. I'll let you know the exact measurements of what you can expect out of a panel like this. And it does have HDR400 support. We do have with this model here Type-C input, so 4K 60, HDMI 2.0, it's got two of those ports, DisplayPort 1.4, and even a 3.5mm headphone jack. And in this in-depth review, I'll go over all of it, and I'll let you know the pros and cons in my time now using the 27C1U from Innocn. And what do we get inside the box of this particular 4K monitor? So we have our power supply now. This is rated to 150 watts. We have our base. So this is what the stand will be connecting to. And then you, of course, slot that into the monitor itself. So that is then the stand right here. So it's made out of plastic, but there's metal reinforcements inside, metal right here too for that. We have a user manual for the monitor. There is a power cable. Then we get a USB cable, display port cable, and then a Type-C to Type-C cable. And then lastly, this, which is very important, there is a factory calibration report. So they've done it for Adobe RGB. There's the calibration. So all of the monitors are calibrated out of the factory, which is great. On the reverse side of it, it is then the measurements for the sRGB calibration. So I will actually be using my Spider X Pro, which I have right here, and I'll check out the color gamut and the color coverage that we have with this, along with its peak brightness, of course. So the back of the stand here, it is reinforced with metal screwed into place. This bracket right here then just clips into the back of the monitor, the stand. Again, there's metal everywhere, which is good, so it's going to be nice and solid. That slots into place like so, and then you just need to screw this in. While that base is only small, it does the job. The monitor does not shake or wobble around. Now you can also tilt it, and I'll show you that in just a minute, but the back of it here, you can see, is quite simplistic. There are no huge logos on the back, no glowing logo or anything like that either. And we do have this hole right here for cable management. So you can poke the cables through that, which is good. Innocn branding here on the top. So it's height adjustable. You can lower it right down. You can then raise it right up, which that's the maximum position right here, and you're able to tilt it up and both down. Well, down actually, no, there doesn't seem to be hardly any downwards movement there for tilting it. Once you tilt it up, you can also rotate it, flip it around, and put it into the landscape presentation there. And then the stand at the bottom, that whole stand does move, so you can swing it then to the left or to the right, the whole thing. So there's plenty of options there with the movement. It's just that tilt down is only just a few degrees there. And the front of our screen here, so we've got these relatively slim bezels. They're only about a fingernail, the width of them, which is pretty good, okay? So they're not huge. The bottom bezel, I don't mind. And then we just have a very simplistic looking Innocn here logo there, which is not offensive or anything, and no controls there. So it does look good. I think presentation-wise, it's got a professional look to it because it doesn't scream gaming or anything like that. It's not a gaming monitor. It's not about the input lag. It is more about color gamut and the reproduction that this can offer. So of course we have a 4K resolution here. It's matte anti-glare coated. It's not fully optically bonded to the IPS panel below it, but the gap is very small there. And that's probably helping a little bit with that anti-glare coating that is over the front of the screen that's over the front of that IPS panel. So our resolution is 3840 by 2160, 60 hertz, not 120, anything like that. So when I move this around here, it doesn't seem too bad. There doesn't seem to be really too much tearing going on or anything of concern. And for a professional use monitor, it's perfectly acceptable and fine. It does look excellent. And now we'll get on to exactly what you can expect, of course, out of this monitor. Innocn do market this as an art monitor, so something for professional use. And take a look at this. The color coverage here, the display gamut is excellent according to the Spider X Pro that I've just measured it with. So sRGB 100%, NTSC that is 90%, Adobe RGB 94%, and then P3 is 91%. So that's great. This is a monitor that I could happily recommend for professional use with these kind of stats right here. And I'll be happy myself personally to edit photos and video on this monitor once, of course, I have calibrated it myself with my Spider X Pro here. The factory calibration isn't too bad as well. It does look good to my eyes. The bright whites are the only thing that really did change here compared to what's calibrated with this. As you see as I switch, that is the calibrated view, and then uncalibrated, barely any change at all. You're probably not even going to see this on camera. And then with that, of course, 640 nits and anti-glare screen. It's super bright. It is quite a nice panel they've gone with here. I have the screen on now displaying just a black image just to take a look at the light leakage. This is very common with IPS screens. So you can see a tiny little bit in the bottom left-hand corner, but it's not really noticeable when you look at it straight on. The light leakage is to a minimal and does look very good. However, if you look at it at an angle, and only really with the lights out, will you see a little bit of what I'm talking about? Just down here, there's a little bit of leakage, but again, looking at it straight on, how you would normally an IPS monitor or any monitor, you don't notice this. So it does, I think, have very good light leakage for an IPS. Now, what about pixels? If you look at the screen really close, so I've zoomed right in here, got my camera very close, and yeah, you might be able to make out pixels, but it's quite hard to do so. This is an extremely sharp looking monitor, so 27-inch, but at that 4K resolution, text does look very good. There's no way at 27 inches that I personally would want to be using a 1080p monitor, because then you can see the pixels. It simply doesn't look sharp enough to me. Now, if you find that the text on screen, of course, is too small, I've got the scaling window set to only 100%. You can, of course, set that to 200% or 150 to increase the size. But it's a great looking screen. Even looking at it closely, a very good IPS panel. Now, what about gaming? So just testing out a little bit of 4K gaming here with GTA 5, and I could quite happily game on this. Input latency on this one, input lag, it doesn't seem that bad at all. Now, it's not as good, of course, as dedicated gaming monitors, and you've got gaming monitors with 120 Hz 4K, and this is just capped out at 60 Hz, of course. It looks good, and I'm not seeing any tearing, and it does have FreeSync support too with this particular one. So even though it's more of a monitor get up for professional use, you can quite happily game on this, and GTA 5 at 4K here does look really good on this monitor. And then a little bit of Matt Watson Cars here on YouTube in 4K looks excellent on this screen with the color reproduction it does have. Of course it's going to, and the nice sharp resolution. It's very detailed, and I happily look at content like this on a monitor from Innocn without any problems. The bottom right here is where you'll find our controls. So these are nice plastic buttons. They feel really good when you press them in, and there's a status LED built into the power button. Now, it will auto detect the source and swap over to that if you have it set in the auto source mode. So tapping here, you can see the controls for the brightness. Very quickly, you can adjust that, and the volume right there too. Bring that up again. You've got the power, and this is the source. You can go through and change that. But it does have, if you click home right here, an on-screen menu system, which I'll go through now. This menu here does time out very quick, 10 seconds by default, but I've set it to 60. So here we have the controls. It tells you how to go up and down, select, and then back here. So I've got a standard picture modes that you can go through and use. Now what I will be using is this one, which is the Adobe mode I will have set there for when I measure that. In fact, I've already done the measurement before that I showed you, and I did use that mode for it. So to set it back on there, normally it's on standard. So I'm going to leave it on that. Now with our picture settings, you've also got these other different options here that you can adjust things like the brightness, the sharpness, contrast, okay, and HDR mode is there too. Aspect ratio, pretty standard kind of settings. Picture in picture, if you needed that, say you were running your main desktop, then you decided to plug in a laptop, you can show that in another picture on this, which is a handy setting to have, a good feature. And then we've got the OSD settings you can go through. Other settings here, pretty typical kind of settings you would see again, so I won't really go into this in too much detail, but you can see you can set then auto input signal that I mentioned before, auto detect, turn that on, auto power, that's another thing that's great. Eye shield reminder, gravity sensor there too as well if you wanted to adjust that, and then just a few other systems settings there like the USB hub. You want to have it on or off, want it sleep mode to be off or on, and then upgrade, I think that's for the factory, and then to reset everything if you needed to do so. So Innocn has made my review quite easy of this one because they've gone and selected an excellent 27-inch 4K 60Hz panel on this one. This IPS has no fixed pixels. It doesn't have any dead ones or any issues. The light bleed is an absolute minimal. I see just a little bit here, only if I just tilt it at a funny kind of angle. I normally look at my monitor straight on anyway, and you're going to have no problems. It has a very good matte anti-glare coating that's over this. Now it isn't fully laminated or bonded to the IPS screen, so there is a minimal gap that you can see that's only about 1 millimeter or so, but it doesn't bother me, and you'll find that with most other brands too as well. The plastics used, the build quality and the stand are excellent. It's quite a good stand, the fact that you can lower it right down, you can raise it right up, and then of course you can tilt it right around and use it then in a portrait mode if you wanted to do so with this. And of course you can tilt it back and forward like so. So it's your typical options, the up and down, left and right there, and it doesn't creak or make any funny noises. It's very solid there too as well. My only criticism of this, and I didn't expect to be saying this, is just the speakers, which is kind of to be expected, right? 5-watt built-in speakers. They're not amazing. There is a little bit of bass, but it is better than nothing. So we do have great options with the Type-C input on this. Really happy to see that. And it does support 65 watts there with that too as well. And HDMI 2.0, we are pretty much covered there. So you can run this with consoles. Now input lag, the latency on this, I would say is standard for a 4K 60Hz screen. It's nothing amazing. Okay, now if you're a dedicated gamer and you're gonna be playing just, for example, Counter-Strike, and you want a 4K monitor for that, then go for, of course, one of those gaming ones. But as this stands as what it is, like a professional focused monitor, definitely for me ticks all the boxes. Great panel in there, great color coverage. I can easily recommend this one here. Now pricing, unfortunately at the time of this video, I don't know anything about the pricing yet because I was sent this just before it's released. But thank you so much for watching my review here of the Innocn, the 27C1U.